Good evening, and welcome to the Psychic Coffee Shop Mountain Bears Edition.
Yes.
Yeah. How are you? How was your week, my cubby?
Well, it's definitely been a week. Doing pretty good.
Good.
Definitely glad for the massage therapy today.
Yeah.
Definitely was needing that.
Yes.
We've been on the road a lot.
We have a lot of things going on.
We did.
It's been interesting. It's been this has been our first week of, me on meds to try to get me focused, minus the cat biting me. That's an issue.
I think it's appropriate that the cat biting you is distracting.
Yeah.
Like that makes sense.
Yeah. But, this is appearing a lot here lately. A lot of us adults weren't diagnosed when we should have been.
Well, and there's a lot that goes into that. And it's sometimes a lot to unpack, because I know that, on one side of it, of course, finding out that, oh, this is why I'm struggling.
Right.
This is why I struggle to properly, appropriately, fruitfully interact.
Right.
And do the thing.
Right.
Is because there's a reason, and there's a whole host of things that you have to take on and reconfigure and understand. So there's always that moment oh my God, my life could have been so much different if someone had just been oh, hi, here you go.
Yeah.
And shown up and been this is the problem.
This
is the solution. We're going to do this.
And here's your cookies.
Do what now?
Here's your reward. Here's your cookies. Here's how you deal with Gantt days. Here's how you do when you lose focus. This is what you do when you do this. Or, it's just please.
So there's that part of it. And then, so I know for some people there's this reflexive anger. Because it's well, why didn't anyone care to figure this out? Why didn't anyone figure this out? Why, did I have to suffer through this? Why did I not get? So there's that aspect of it as well.
Right.
And in a lot of situations, for some people, it was that we went through this weird period. In the old days of medicine, where we didn't think that you could co-diagnose.
Right.
So some people had two issues, and they were oh, well, that second one is just, it's part of the first one. It doesn't matter. Whatever. The bigger issue was this. And for other people, it's that we didn't know what we didn't know until we figured it the fuck out.
Right.
Because some ADD, ADHD, for the longest time, it was girls don't get that.
Right.
It's a boy problem. No. No.
If you can sit in your seat for 8 hours and shut the fuck up, you don't get that, you can't have that.
Well, and that also goes into parenting of before the millennium,
right?
In which there were so many kids that were basically living in fear.
Right.
That's the long and short of it. Is you knew if you screwed up at school, if you didn't and it makes it sound like ADHD and ADD aren't real.
Right.
When you say it this way, but it's also no, you have to realize the level of fear that you have instilled in a child. to be so afraid of what would
Right.
happen when you went home
Right.
if you got in trouble at school. And then the reality is, for 8 hours a day, you were stuck in a building.
Right.
And you weren't getting from the experience of being there what you were supposed to.
Right.
And you were basically spending 8 hours a day getting told, you're not smart enough, you can't do this. You, like, when you stop and like really expound upon that, you spent like 13 years
Right.
being judged by how well, as a fish, you could climb a tree.
Right.
Which, for some people it was a little better than others. But fundamentally, you were getting judged on how well you can climb a tree
Right.
as a fish.
Right.
All these other tree climbing animals were doing great around you.
Right.
But you, the fish, not
Right.
so hot. So yeah, I think it's a lot for a lot of adults to unpack, is that, like, one, this wasn't malicious.
Right.
Like, sincerely, this wasn't malicious. This was the best we knew at the time.
Right.
And that, yeah, a lot of things could have been different, but also there's an element of, like, you did overall, for most, learn some coping skills.
Right. Masking.
Well, masking mostly. But you did learn other coping skills. Like, you did learn them.
Right.
You just had to figure them out the very, 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 very hard way.
Yes.
So it sucks that you had to figure them out the very, very hard way. But it doesn't mean that you inherently totally were at a loss.
Right.
So, now it's just like, here's additional tools you can take, with you, put in your tool bag,
right.
Utilize those, and you can take what you've already done,
right,
without the additional tools, the appropriate tools for the job.
Right.
And now you have, I would almost say, like, to an extent, because I don't think people think about it this way, is now you've been given the tools you should have had all along.
Right.
So now you almost have a superpower.
Right. And you can use that superpower and it's like finding things that should be done differently. Or, and then using...
Because it's like you already got this far with what you had.
Right.
And okay, now we're at, like, here's the Batman belt.
Right.
Like, hi. We can't undo the past. That sucks. Yeah. But now you have all the tools. Integrate and take off.
Exactly. And forward motion.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But no, there's a lot of people going through that.
Like, I was surprised at the number of people, and we were talking, and it's like, oh no, they don't have the breakdown anymore, and it's like, yeah, they do. They have the breakdown. They have, like, no, we all go through this. We all have similar tricks, and it's like, okay, cool. All right. So hello, Shannon. I love your socks. I hope they're funny socks as you slide in. Don't hit the coffee bar. Brenda says that a friend was diagnosed dyslexic until college. Thought the school, they just thought she was a slow learner. Low sounds very familiar. Lazy or purposely not studying. Yes, we know this. We know this. I've heard all that with dyslexia. Hello, Devin. Nice to see you sliding in.
I don't know how y'all count this, but I was in 5th grade before they figured out I needed glasses. Yeah. And not just a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, oh, well, he does okay, but, it would be a little easier if he had glasses. No, we figured out, oh, Jesus Christ.
Right.
He severely needs glasses. Like, I didn't, because again, like I was potentially born with like a level of visual deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew of the world what I could see of the world, and I was nearsighted, so anything I could get close enough to my face,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I can see and understand that. But since no one can see through your eyes, literally or whatever, figuratively, um, like until someone stops and goes, "Oh, here, read this," and it's like, read what? Because that was my literal experience. I was in a classroom, teacher had given a quiz, written half and half on a board. I was seated because assigned seating, and I could see one board.
Right.
I couldn't see the other one. I didn't know she'd written anything on it. This was her clue in, I think you need glasses.
Right.
Took me for an eye exam, and I think there was a whole moment of, how have you coped this long?
Right.
Like, how have you made it through? And it's like, well, I don't know.
Right. And again, I find it interesting. How's this week been with me?
I like little bit of a roller coaster, because I know you're adjusting to a lot of things.
Right.
Like, not just the med, but I think you're having. I don't know if a little bit of it is like the new med side effects, like, or how much of it is like in slowing down your thought process.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're having a deeper experience.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Which I think might be the case, and I think you're getting a little overwhelmed by the deeper experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think you're used to having rapid emotions.
Uh-huh.
But, and I don't want to say this in a way that sounds really, really bad, but like the experience isn't as deep for each of them.
Right.
And then now it's like you're slowing down, and it's like you're having an emotion, but you're having a broader space of the emotion.
Right.
And so your body's like, what is all of this?
Right.
Whoa, this is like a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's what that emotion feels like. Yep. Oh, Brenda's saying you are speaking calmer and more focused on the shows.
Yep. So we will see how it is. There's going to be some changes. There's going to be like, I'm finding I have to write every step down. Otherwise, shit ain't getting done. And that's been a discovery. It's like, how could I have forgotten to do that?
Well, and I think we need to also mention, like, you're talking about things that you, like, this is pre-med.
Yeah.
Like, you're catching stuff now that, like, you stopped somewhere along the line. And you're like, oh, shit, I totally stopped doing that.
Yeah.
Oopsies. How did I forget to do that?
Right.
And that is part of the process, is like, and I know it's got to be overwhelming, because it's got to feel like every day, or like every hour, or every whatever the interval is what I'm getting at. You're getting slapped in the face like, you forgot to do that. You forgot to do that. You didn't do this. What were you thinking? And it's like, okay, but that's not really it. It's like you were thinking a lot of things
at once. So yeah, Psychic the Plans is going to be interesting. I've got some design work to do tonight for the new planning system. It's going to look like a lot, but it really isn't a lot. It's just I need every little piece. Yeah. And everything's got to be planned and put in. Because like little things are getting missed, and then they become hyper fixations, and then they become nothing because my brain's over it.
Okay. Now, I think the one thing I really have to ask, are you noticing you're multitasking? Like, where are you at with the multitasking? Because you've always been like, I can do 50 things at once.
Yeah.
Are you starting to reevaluate that yet?
Very
like,
much so.
Okay.
Yeah, like it is like, no. The max is 3, and that's if I can shut down other things. What I mean by that is I have my earbuds on, my music's playing, my YouTube's playing, so that I shut down like the fucking fan that drives me now crazy, or the ticking clock that drives me crazy. You know, I've noticed all these little things that I don't have filters for right now.
Okay. All right. I was curious with that because I know you've always like, and I say this with kindness, I really try to.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sometimes like my head wants to explode? Like I'll sometimes even from my office, my head wants to explode because he's got like a YouTube video going, he's on a call, he's got another YouTube video going on the television.
Mm-hmm.
And like timers are going off and I'm just sitting in the office like find my zen.
Right.
And but you previously would just be like la 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 la, like I'm doing my day. And meanwhile, like you've got like a chat window up and you're on a call, and you're sending an email and I'm just like,
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. Brenda, you have no clue how bad I've thought about getting the loop earphones or the loop earplugs. I've thought about it. What I worry about with these are an assistive device. That they're not headphones per se.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't listen, so to speak, to anything through them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a noise dampering.
Mm-hmm.
I have thought about those. It becomes one of those things I get a little nervous
Mm-hmm.
about. Like I go back and forth.
Right.
Because I remember when they used to tell you to like put in earplugs.
Right.
Because I have anxiety. And so they used to tell you, well, like put in earplugs and that way you cancel out the sound. What they don't tell you about that is that works right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really great.
Right.
It also reduces your ability to cope in situations where you cannot put in earplugs.
Right.
Where you have to actively listen and do the filter.
Right. Right. And that's the reason, like, this past week I've had like an earbud in with music on, and I'm in a task list, and just working off that task list. And anything pops up, it goes onto the task list of later, so that I'm not washing dishes, folding laundry, sweeping the floors, taking a keen chat, taking a Zodiac call, planning my marketing for next week, and listening to the latest and greatest Kylie Minogue song.
Yeah. Well, see, Brenda, that's what makes that's the positive side. Is I'm going, well, it's not a total cancellation.
Right.
Like earplugs are a total cancellation. That's a problem.
Right.
I'm just afraid that like I take them out, I'm gonna be overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I get a little weird about some things like that. That it's like, I don't know, like,
yeah.
But
and Pomodoro, Lord Pomodoro technique. Those are the timers he hears going off. Is Pomodoros.
Yeah, which I like. Don't get me wrong. I'm not technically mad about any of it.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes. Well, but see, even with those, sometimes you're in that situation where you're on a call.
Right.
And you can't tell it to stop.
Right.
So it's just
right
on and on for like 20, 30 minutes.
Right.
And it's like, I'm going to lose my mind.
Right. And that's why I'm like,
I don't know what because I don't necessarily know what the timer is for.
Right.
Because he sets timers all the time, and
Right.
none of them are named.
Right.
Almost never does he name a timer.
Right.
And it's like, is that food? Was that, like, what is that? Or is it a reminder? Is that a warning?
Mm-hmm.
So you turn off an Aeson timer. It might be a Pomodoro that he doesn't need anymore. It might be why dinner gets burned. You don't know.
Yeah.
Like, like it could be a pre-warning for an appointment. It could be like you don't know what you're turning off. I take the approach of just don't turn any of them off and just like sit here like I'm gonna kill it.
Right.
As it rings for like 20 or 30 minutes. Like
Right. All right, well, let's dive into the news feed. The one article that I think you should be interested in is the cancellation of $7.4 billion in student loan debt.
yeah, so Joe Biden will cancel seven for now. Okay, like this story confuses me because I like there's words that don't go together.
Right.
So Joe Biden will cancel 7.4 billion in student debt for 277,000 borrowers. But then it turns around and says that Joe Biden announced plans on Monday. So these are two separate plans, right?
Right.
Okay, because there's one to ease student debt that would benefit 23 million Americans.
Right.
And then there's another 277,000.
Right.
Okay, cool. Got it now. Anyway, these plans include canceling up to 20,000 of accrued and capitalized interest for borrowers, regardless of income, which Biden's administration estimates would eliminate the entirety of that interest for 23 million borrowers. The newest plan affects 277,000 Americans enrolled in the SAVE plan. Other borrowers enrolled in income-driven repayment plans, and borrowers receiving public service loan forgiveness, the White House said in a statement. So yeah, it follows an announcement in March that 6 billion in student loans would be canceled for 78,000 borrowers. The administration said on Friday it had approved 153 billion in student debt relief for 4.3 million Americans. So yeah, like we're finally getting student debt relief.
Right.
Because this is like, and I know I say this as a student loan borrower, like, and the part that gets me is it's not like I borrowed a ton of money.
Right.
But Jesus Christ, the interest, even at 3%,
Right.
the interest on this. And like, if you want to talk Republican for a second, like I did the thing, I got a STEM degree.
Right.
Like in a field that was supposed to make me money.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it. Because when I went into college, I was supposed to come out and get a starting, like, fresh starter job.
Right.
At roughly 75,000 a year in 2005.
Right.
During the course of getting that degree, that pretty much got less than halved or more than halved.
Right.
Like it cleaved off like 60% of that income went away.
Right.
And so I left college at 30,000.
Right.
Because literally my 5-year plan,
right.
So by 2010, was I was going to pay off all my student loan debt. Because all I had to do was economize.
Right.
Live cheaply for like 5 years. And pay all this off.
Right.
No problem. No sweat. Like I had a 5-year plan.
Right.
Knock this out. Um, when 60% of your income gets, or projected income, what you were supposed to be making when
Right.
I'm in this plan, gets cleaved off, what I was left with at $30,000 a year, in North Carolina, um, was treading water.
Mm-hmm.
And, I maxed out forbearance.
Yeah.
Like, I could not, like, I sat there and needed a car, could get qualified to buy one, but I could make the payment on the car or I could pay the insurance on the car. I couldn't do both.
Right.
I could pay the insurance and the payment on the car, but not my rent.
Right.
Like, it was like, what do I want to give up? It's either rent, insurance, or food,
Right.
or don't buy the car.
Right.
So, of course, obvious choice, don't buy the car.
Mm-hmm.
And that's while in forbearance. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there in this moment, like, how did that happen?
Right.
Like, this wasn't, and that's after like 3 raises. And I was still at that level. And that's where I think a lot of millennial borrowers ended up.
Well, I think that's where a lot of people ended up, because I'm sorry, we were promised jobs with salaries starting out that sounded amazing.
Well, it wasn't just that they were amazing. I mean, they were solid, and I even had allowances for, okay, maybe it won't be that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be coming out, fresh degree, wet ink on paper. It might not be exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, so let's build them. And again, I'm still sitting there going, like, I'm like, I'm looking at, like, what are rent prices? What is it going to take? Like, trying to budget.
Right.
Nowhere did my budget think 30,000 gross, 30,000 was where I was going to start at.
Right.
And then that kept getting dinged.
Right.
Like, I finally realized at the end that, like, I took a pay cut in 5 years.
Right.
So between 05, when I started at 30,000,
Mm-hmm.
I managed to get 3 raises to 37.8.
Right.
Meanwhile, retrospectively realized I actually took a pay cut.
Right.
Because they shifted, because 2005, you still had companies, and I worked for one, that when I started, it was 100% employee fund, or employer funded health insurance.
Right.
By the time, and then that quickly changed to an 80-20 split.
Mm-hmm.
And then the copays started.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is a borderline catastrophic insurance plan that you're paying a very high premium on, and it doesn't cover lab work.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just sitting there going, so at the end of the day, if you account for benefits,
Right.
I was better off in 2005 at 30,000, 100% insurance on a really good insurance plan than I was in 2010 making $7,800 more, paying a 20% match on a crappy insurance.
Right. Well, and it's like me, when I was in RN school, we were promised a minimum of 60,000 a year, flat 40 hours. There was no nurse working a flat 40-hour schedule at that time. They're still living. But that's what we were promised. And then it's like, okay, well, that's cute. And, halfway through it, I'm $30,000 in debt to the company and can no longer even do the work. So had to come up and pay that on top of it. And no one planned for that. No one said, well, if you injure your back, if a patient attacks you, if you are traumatically injured, this is your game plan afterwards.
Oh yeah, no, they didn't talk about that.
No.
And I'm kind of mad that at least in the early 2000s, we still weren't talking in terms of you're going to have to change jobs every couple of years.
Yeah.
I only knew that because I had relatives that were already doing it.
Right.
And like it was one of those shocking things. Like, what do you mean you wanted a raise so you quit?
Right.
Like, not just like, hi, I quit, I want a raise, I quit, and then went and found another job, but like the traditional, you went and found another job and effectively got a raise or a promotion.
Right.
Or both.
Or both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't get told that.
Right.
And some of it, even knowing it, it was still like, that's icky. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're
Right.
supposed to be a good, loyal employee, right?
Yeah. Work for your
Like, loyalty, hard work pays off.
Right.
Loyalty is appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all these things are, and it's like, yeah, the bottom fell out of that one.
You know, seniority gets your Christmas off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that was, you know, the longer you're here, the more benefits we'll give you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know.
So it was a wake up call. Definitely the company I went to out of the gate.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, any ability, like, we have a lot of conversations about nobody wants to work anymore, quote unquote. And the reality is that no, I'm not going to become your wage slave.
Right.
For crappy wages.
Right.
And continuously put the company ahead of myself.
Right.
In ways that negatively impact me.
Right.
Like, and we don't just mean like, oh, you didn't get to play on your, PlayStation all day. That, no. We're talking about major health issues. We're talking about injury. We are talking about, all the horrible things that can come out of perpetual stress and overwork and exceedingly long hours.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, we're not doing it.
Right.
Like, if that's your definition of work, I don't want to know what your definition of enslavement is.
True.
Like, how much worse is your idea of enslavement?
Right. Well,
like,
and this has occurred in the medical field forever. This is how you get your, before nursing schools, that's how you got into nursing, is you went to work for a company and you worked your way up.
Mm-hmm.
And, they would train you. You start out as an orderly or a bedpan nurse and you work your way up.
Mm-hmm.
Then they got nurses schools, which was great. And, professional standards, which was wonderful. And, then companies, and especially back then, how can we cut the bottom line? Well, let's not have staff. Can one nurse see 24 patients? Of course they can. All right, then bye. We only need 4 nurses. We only need 1 nurse on night shift. We only need 1 nurse on day shift.
And then they figured out that, well, 1 nurse can cover 48 patients. They're just not very happy about it.
Right.
Which, I mean, it became insanity. And then I know by 2010, like for my field, because there was a recession.
Mm-hmm.
I did walk out of that job because I couldn't take it anymore. I'd probably be dead by now, like well before now. And I knew that. I knew I was hitting tilt. That right. It's like I have to walk out or I'm going to be dead.
Right.
Minor chance of being locked up, but a huge chance that I'm going to drop dead in the next 5 years. Like 5 more years of this job, I'm dead.
Right.
Like there's no question. And so the first recruiter I met with, and I give them a lot of credit for their sincere honesty and directness. who looked at me and said, I don't know that I'm going to be able to help you. And I was like, okay, like, what do I need to do? Because I'm like, well, this has got to be fixable, right?
Right.
You know I'm lacking certifications. I know I'm like, he's like, you don't understand. I have people with 35 years of experience and all the certifications you can imagine willing right now to take jobs under 30,000 a year because they're just trying to hold on to their house.
Right.
And that's your competition for entry level and 5 years experience.
Right.
Like that's who you're up against, or people that are like well seasoned and certificated out the ass.
Right. And see, yeah, well, your industry took a change. What I mean by that is it became a degreed industry, whereas beforehand it was bootstrap. You learn, as long as you knew your shit and could provide a portfolio and knew what a Gantt chart was, which, God, I hate those.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. Show that.
And I mean, notably, by my degree, we spent way too much time on Gantt charts.
Right.
For how, like, I have not used one since. I'm just saying. Spent a lot of time in the classroom being told how important it was to be able to use Gantt charts.
Right.
Never again used it. Never. I know what they are. I know how they work. I can follow them. It's not a problem. It's one of those skills you learn. But I thought this was going to be a very important part of my career. Then I got into real world projects and found out that no, in the real world, for most businesses outside of the Fortune 500, for most businesses, it's basically 2 weeks. Like you will have a manager who will promise something within 2 weeks. And basically the entire IT team, however many people that is, will run around like crazy Swedish chefs, like do as fast as they can, trying to handle multiple of these.
Right.
Without burning the place to the ground.
At minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gantt chart?
Or you have other people that use what I used to call pure timeline. This to this is due this day. This to this is due this day. We have a presentation on this project by this day. And organizing it all. And it all depended on the place you worked at, on how things were done. There wasn't standardization. It's much like what I'm seeing happening now in social media. The social media managers, there's not a degree. There's a prove your worth.
There is. I think that's one field that or one area that was smart enough to realize that degreeing this is probably the dumbest idea you're ever going to have.
Right.
For the simple fact of it changes.
Yeah.
Daily. Like the time it takes to build a curriculum and try to really like engage a student population to believe you're going to get a degree. By the time these kids got out, it would be like, that's cute. Right. We did that like 5 years ago.
Right.
Speed it up.
Right. Well, and the same thing happens in nursing. You're taught one thing in real life is another.
Well, and I do appreciate my IT degree for that because I did have a professor that very clearly articulated that. Like, because like my database professor, I will give so much credit for pointing out that this is an ideal situation. Your real world experience is going to be a shit ton more data.
Yeah.
Probably on an antiquated system that doesn't even know what SQL is.
Right.
On a server that's duct tape, spit, and a prayer held together.
Right.
And no, the data is garbage.
Right.
Good luck. We can tell you what it's supposed to look like. We can teach you from that. And ultimately, when you get out of here, you're going to do your best to try to get as close to this as you can.
Right.
Like, it's not always possible.
Right.
And it's like, oh, like, I appreciate that.
Right.
Because when I got out into the real world,
yeah,
there was no lies to that statement.
Exactly. But no, I wish they would erase student loan debt for careers that you did not go into.
Yeah. I think even if you go into the career and like you came in at one expectation and then ended up with another.
Right.
But more to the point, I think as heavily as we have drilled in, and especially like, pre, 2000, that you had to go to college to get a good job.
Right.
As hard as we drilled that in,
yeah,
I think we do have to flex some on the realities that the job market changed
quickly.
Like, I'm sorry, the sheer volume, like the fact that we have teachers doing OnlyFans,
right?
Because they can make in a month or less what they can make per year is insane.
Right.
Like, and nowhere like 10 years ago were we thinking that's gonna totally be how that works out.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's totally like we're gonna totally see teachers throw away 4 years and at least associates.
Right.
6 years of education down the drain because they can make more taking their clothes off.
Right.
Like, no one processed that.
Right.
Like, teaching was supposed to be the stability job. We always need teachers. Teachers are important. Education first. Like, we
yeah. And the fact that, right now I could go and teach in Fayette County is scary.
Yeah. Oh, that is the freakiest thing right now.
Yeah.
The requirements are, and that's not an insult to you. I mean, the require.
As he freezes, the requirements to be a teacher right now
are just.
They're very, very low. Like anyone in our audience, if you want a job teaching,
are just. Do you have a felony that involves a child? No. You can probably be a teacher.
Yep.
Like, and notice the specifics of those words. Like,
right.
I don't even think they care if you have a felony anymore. I mean, do they?
I don't think so.
Like, as long as it doesn't involve children or like sex crimes or anything like, it's like, well, it was a B&E, it was some possession. Like, you can go to a classroom, it's fine.
Right. That's just weird to me because, we look like, I'm sorry, a lot of my teachers had PhDs. A lot of my teachers were highly trained professionals.
That were also, like, and here's the missing part of that, is who at the time were fairly well compensated for that.
Right.
Like, they had a financial incentive to go get these degrees.
Right.
They had a financial incentive to take the additional training. They had the incentive to be there.
Right.
Now, I know that started eroding severely by the late 90s.
Right.
Because I remember that being the point where I started first hearing teachers, and it wasn't just like, oh, I'm selling a little Mary Kay and some Tupperware. And moved into, I have a part-time job.
Right.
Like, I leave here, and then, because I literally had a teacher that did, I leave here, and then I drive my happy ass to Mercer Mall and sell jewelry.
Right.
To make the ends meet.
Right.
And it's like, how do you deal with 4 classes a day?
Right.
And then you leave here for a part-time job. Like,
all right.
And I mean, this wasn't a 20-year-old woman. Like, this was an experienced educator. She probably had 20 years experience at that point. And she has to have a second job.
Right.
It's insane. So Shannon says you just need a master's in a field, any field, and 1 year experience working with kids. That's it. I thought we dropped even lower than that.
We did.
For substitutes, that's what it is. It's for substitute.
Right.
Because I think that's just, you have to have a high school education and a clean background check.
Right.
And you too can become a substitute teacher.
Well, and see, the thing is they're using substitutes as like, oh, you're a substitute, but you're not full time.
Like, fill the gap.
Right.
Because I mean, it's not like they pay the substitutes very well,
right.
And you're not on contract, so you don't have any of the union benefits.
Right.
So you legitimately are cheaper.
Right.
Which is insane. Like, this is how we're handling education.
Right.
I mean, what? Like, what? What?
Right.
So it really becomes a question of what. I just keep waiting for the tipping point. Yeah, substitutes just need high school diploma or GED and no criminal record. That's a substitute in West Virginia. And how many of those end up teaching for a whole year, year after year, because we can't afford to hire a real teacher?
Right.
And I don't mean that to be insulting. I've had substitutes in the past that I've loved more than the teacher. Okay. So I want to make that clear. Some people they didn't get the degree, but they have the aptitude.
Right.
But it's a little scary when it's like, we'll take a warm body.
Right.
Because that's basically where that comes down to anymore, is we'll take a warm body. Do you have a pulse? Teach a class.
Right.
Just keep them from killing each other.
Right.
Like, and that seems to be the goal, is just like keep them from killing each other.
And get them through that standardized testing. We got to make sure we get the standardized testing in place.
Oh yeah, there's always that. That's a whole other topic. But anyway, so the fact that we are now legitimately looking at canceling student loan debt, I think is great.
Right.
I think there needs to be a next. And I hope that in the future we have the next, which is we've got to increase spending on education across the board, not only in the primary education and secondary education, but also to get and retain actual educators,
right,
and real subjects in all subjects, and not just this. We're a total STEM school, and we don't have none of them stinking extracurriculars and arts and shit. No, get our education back where it was,
right,
maybe a little better.
Right.
But then also turn around and realize that if you want this to continue, we cannot continue having this much educational debt.
Right.
Like, you've got to figure out how to fill the gap and get private equity out of education.
Yep.
Like, this cannot, like, our colleges and universities cannot become hostage to the private sector.
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't work. We've seen it not work for many years now.
Right.
It only gets worse and uglier and more burdensome, and fail spectacularly to actually educate students, because you've got a for-profit motive.
Right.
Which was to get the fucking money from the government.
Right.
You didn't care if any of these people received an education or got a job. You created slick advertising, promised careers that they would never see, got them to sign their name and give you a social security number, milked the federal government for every dime you could,
right,
and really went after veterans and service members, bilked the government for every dime you could, and then you couldn't even hold accreditation.
Right.
You couldn't even demonstrate that the advertising materials and what you said was legit.
Yeah.
Like, those are the people I feel the worst for.
Right. And I think those have to be gone back over and just removed.
Which I think since Betsy DeVos left,
right,
I think they finally did that.
Yeah.
I hope.
I hope. All right. So the Chad Daybell case has started.
Yeah, so Idaho man Chad Daybell on trial for doomsday plot killings. So Chad Daybell is accused of killing ex-wife Tammy Daybell, as well as Joshua J.J. Vallow, 7, and Tylee Ryan, 16. The children's mother, Lori Vallow Daybell, was sentenced to life in prison for their murders last year. Mr. Daybell, 55, faces the death penalty if convicted. He has pleaded not guilty. At the start of Mr. Daybell's trial on Wednesday, prosecutors said that he and Ms. Vallow believed her children were dark spirits and zombies and murdered them in 2019, approximately a year after the pair met at a religious event. Prosecutors claimed the two were having an affair together and came to view Mrs. Daybell as a potential obstacle. When he had a chance at what he considered his rightful destiny, he made sure that no person, no law would stand in his way, prosecutor Rob Wood said. His desire for sex, money, and power led him to pursue those ambitions, and this pursuit led to the deaths of his wife and Lori's 2 innocent children. After a long search, the remains of the children were found buried on Mr. Daybell's property in June 2020. One of the children had been dismembered and burned, while the other was bound. Mrs. Daybell died of asphyxiation in October 2019, 17 days before Mr. Daybell married Miss Vallow at a ceremony in Hawaii. Mr. Woods said that jurors will be shown extended text messages to reveal his mindset and his motivations. The attorney defending Mr. Daybell, John Pryor, said expert witnesses would testify that his client's DNA was never found on the children's remains. Instead, he sought to shift blame to Miss Vallow's brother, Alex Cox, who died in 2019. At the time of his death, police were investigating an incident in which Mr. Cox shot dead his sister's 4th husband, Charles Vallow. Whenever there was a problem or threat, you will hear testimony that Alex Cox came to the rescue, Mr. Pryor said, adding that Mr. Cox's DNA was found on a piece of plastic alongside one of the children's remains. Additionally, Mr. Pryor claimed there was no evidence to suggest that Mrs. Daybell's death was the result of foul play. Mr. Daybell has also been charged with conspiracy to commit murder and faces insurance fraud charges stemming from life insurance policies he had taken out. The judge in the case, Steve Boyce, sentenced Ms. Vallow to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole in July 2023. The trial is expected to last approximately 9 weeks.
Which will be a long trial. The thing that I find interesting here is it's a different view of the case. He's going with the wife told me to.
What, Chad Daybell?
Yeah.
It doesn't even sound like he's going with that. It sounds like he's going, well, there's this conveniently dead person.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know nothing about nothing.
Right.
I don't know how all this just magically happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what I read. It's like, don't let a good dead body go to waste.
Right.
Like Alex Cox. And oh, look how convenient. He's there's a little bit of DNA.
Yeah.
That connects Alex Cox to the dead children.
Right.
And I just don't know what happened to my wife.
Mm-hmm.
I took out a lot of insurance policies really close to her death, but I don't know what happened to her.
Right.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. And I like this prosecutor more than I like this defense counsel, because this defense counsel gives some my last gypsum nerve.
And I will say the prosecutor is grandstanding a little bit with his statements.
His opening statement was fucking amazing. He broke it down into chapters just like he was writing one of Chad Daybell's books.
Oh, yeah. Well, but probably written better, because I've heard those are quite wild.
Yeah, they weren't the best.
Yeah, no. An author, he is not. Well, a good author, he is not.
Yeah, so I think it's dreadful. I hope the jury gets it right. I think the death penalty is going to be hard. But we will see. And of course, we'll be following this along and reporting back. And of course, giving opinions on this, because this case but then also I've been watching some comparisons. Okay. You guys will remember the Ruby Frankie case we just talked about last week. Comparing the two is fucking scary as hell.
Mm-hmm.
They're so fucking close.
Yeah, you've been talking about that for a while now. And what we're really getting into is what the fuck fundamentalists.
Yeah.
Was there a bad Bible shipment full of acid or something? What is wrong with y'all?
Right.
Y'all are wilding over here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, off the beaten path.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Not just a little and a little and a little.
Yeah.
I mean, went over a cliff.
Right. And I feel like that it's weird. But then I also see a lot of the conversation, and this is what makes me a lot of the wording, a lot of the conversation smells a lot like the new agey shit. And the more I'm even hearing from the Chad Daybell case, because this case, even though it's the same crime, they're putting on a different case with more.
I'll be back in just a second.
Let's take we'll take a break.
Are you ready for an enchanting journey of self-discovery and empowerment? Dive into the mystical world of Wicca with our courses guided by Lord Aeson Knight. Unveil Wicca's secrets, explore fundamental principles, and delve into essential topics like deity relationships and the purpose of rituals. Aeson Knight, a third-degree high priest, shares his wisdom through life coaching lessons, guiding you towards a brighter future. Step into the inner circle of enlightenment. Enroll today to embark on a journey toward a more empowered you. Click the link to take your first step into the magical circle.
Ready to join the Psychic Coffee Shop Network? By becoming our patron, you'll unlock exclusive content from Aeson Knight, host of the Psychic Coffee Shop podcast and co-host of the Mountain Bears podcast, alongside the tech-savvy Techie Joe. Choose from subscription options ranging from Tall $1, Grande $5, to Venti $10 per month, supporting us in covering production costs and beyond. Depending on your subscription level, enjoy discounts on private readings, free access to classes and special events, behind-the-scenes extras, and the chance to participate in station meetings. Plus, you'll get early access to new content and the opportunity to shape future topics. We'll acknowledge your support in the credits of our videos. Don't wait. Brew some magic and join us today as a valued member. Link in the show description. Aeson Knight, your gateway to a transformed life. In a world where anyone can claim to be a life coach, Aeson stands out as a true professional with the skills and qualifications to guide you on your journey to success. So why invest in a personal life coach? Let's explore the game-changing benefits Aeson brings to the table. Ever find it hard to stay committed to change on your own? Aeson's expertise ensures you stay on track. With him as your coach, that internal drive kicks in, motivating you to keep your promises and achieve your goals. Making a change is tough, but Aeson makes it 1,000 times easier. He's your unwavering support, guiding you through challenges, pushing you beyond your limits, and believing in you even when you doubt yourself. Friends are great, but they may not always want to see you succeed. Aeson, on the other hand, is dedicated solely to your success. He removes negativity and limiting beliefs, giving you the tailored support you need. Forget endless hours deciphering advice from books and videos. Aeson is your shortcut to effective change. He saves you time and money by offering personalized attention, guiding you toward the tools and lessons that will truly work for you. Ready for a better tomorrow? Book your discovery call with Aeson Knight now. Take the first step toward the life you've always dreamed of. Aeson Knight, your partner in transformation. Start your journey today.
Welcome back. All right. So as I was saying, like the more information is dropping, the more I'm worried about the New Age community.
I don't know whether to be worried about the New Age community itself, or the portion of the of fundamental.
Okay, he's frozen, but he's saying basically the portion of fundies that have gone New Age, packed their dirty suitcases in.
Well, yeah, like the blend is going wild,
right?
Like, and there seems to be this overlap, at least between Valo Daybell and Frankie, of this like weird intertwine of like fundamentalism and New Age. That's like, okay, I'm not saying those can't go together ever,
right?
But not like that.
Right, and then you have like the New Agers that are like, oh, you're crystal warriors fighting for the world and, you know, the balance of light and dark. And I've heard it, I've read it, and it's like, no. Go down to the church down there. That's where you belong, not in my circle.
Yeah, well, I think the bigger question is, like, how?
Right.
Like, that's what I really want to know is, how did these two things get slammed together?
Right.
Like, where did it start, and how has it gone this sideways?
Right.
Because, I mean, typically, if you're talking about your normal run-of-the-mill, like, oh, I'm spiritual, you know, I go to a church, but I also, you know, really have a large crystal collection and believe in essential oils. That's one set of predictabilities.
Right.
Just in general, like, I don't expect someone who says that statement to be like, oh, and my dead children are in my boyfriend's backyard.
Right. And those dead children are talking with me and telling me everything going on in the other side, and they're very busy. And, you know, the woman, I stole her husband from her and we killed her, is so thankful I'm taking care of him on this side because she's very busy in the afterlife.
Yeah. And flip side, like, I also don't expect, you know, them to have a child chained up in a panic room.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when someone says, oh, you know, I'm kind of Christian, I'm spiritual, you know, I just kind of take the whole universe together and, you know, I'm following my own path. Okay, I have a certain set of expectations. Nowhere in there has that ever been. I abuse my children and or conspire to kill them.
Right.
Because I think they have like a demonic entity or spirit or whatever.
Right.
However you want to interpret what they've said, that's controlling their actions and they're evil.
Right.
Like, no, I mean, on the fringe of New Age is the idea that you have like an attachment.
Right.
And that's generally like that starts moving into cringe New Age and like back up.
Right.
Like that's typically more of a money scam issue most of the time. But it's not like, oh, let's go kill some people.
Right. But if you ever, I don't know if you've heard me or heard, me listen to some of these ones that believe in like the fifth dimension and third dimensionary realities. And
oh yeah, I had to come to you on that one because I had someone start talking to me and I was like, what is that about?
Right. Well, a lot of the stuff I'm hearing sounds a lot like that group, and I'm like, ooh, no.
Well, but I'm afraid it may be a guilt by association. Like, okay, this is a different thought process, and it's been co-opted.
Right. And that happens.
Like, you know what I mean? Like Nazis who are into astrology.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, but that's not what astrology is about.
Right.
Like, that's one thing, and then the fact that got co-opted over here is no.
Right.
No. Big crowbar separation between the two. Like, no. Like, they are not the same thing. Like, not every astrologer or every psychic is a Nazi.
No.
That's not how that works. But we also see that in what is it? Nordic.
Right. Like they've got a cancer situation going on there that's got to get handled. Like those leaders have to get a really hard stance.
Oh, did I really get it right on the first try? I just knew it was like Nordic associated, and I was like, "There's another word."
Yeah. Well, Heathen is the proper term, but Norse practitioners.
Norse. Thank you.
And
that's what I was trying to do.
Has got a very large racist problem on their hands.
Yeah. Well, and it's because it's two separate things, but it got co-opted.
Well, it got co-opted because of the Nazis and the rise of neo-Nazism, re-tapping into the blight that the Nazi party did on the Germanic faiths, and it's just a fucking hellscape.
Like, I feel bad when we've met Norse, the people that follow a Norse path,
right?
That have to immediately clarify,
right?
But not like that,
right?
Like, I'm down with the universe of diverse population. I am very happy everyone is here on this planet. Right. I do not want to.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. But the fact you even have to say that, it's like, you really got to realize when you go down that path that it's like, oh, like you hit the hard mode button, buddy.
Well, yeah, and then you've got like runes in general are still affected by the use of Nazi using them in Nazi symbolism.
Well, and not just runes, but well, okay, it is runes technically, but just like, and it's not just like runes. We're going to throw these out. But a number of symbolisms had to really like, we're going to downplay that one because it's got some bad associations around the world.
We're not going to use that one. We're not going to, so SOL, like, people don't wear that anymore. And it used to be success and magic and protection.
But if you do it,
success, you won't see that anywhere. Nobody's wearing the double lightning bolt anymore.
Nope. Don't do that.
And see, the Buddhists got kicked with that too, the Tibetan Buddhists, because they also have the same symbol.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about, is this affected a lot more than just like, oh, runes were affected. Yeah, that's true. But then you have like some symbols are across multiple religions and beliefs, and it just so happens it's the same symbol, but it has a different meaning and interpretation and use and like whatever.
Right.
But even in that, it's like you don't want to use that one.
Yeah.
Like
you don't want to wear that one.
No.
Yeah.
No. And yeah, it's like, and that's the problems that occur there.
Yes.
And technically, even in the U.S., we changed how we pledged allegiance to the flag.
Right.
We changed how we pledged allegiance to the flag. One, we started doing it.
Right.
But two, even after we did it, or started doing it again, we also had to change how we did it because we didn't want any confusion.
Right.
Between, a Nazi salute and a Bellamy pledge.
Right.
Because those look similar.
Right.
And we were a little traumatized around the world by, the Nazi salute and children.
Right.
Because Hitler Youth was a thing. That's a lot of changes to dissociate.
Right.
Like that's what one horribly bad idea did.
Yeah.
One horribly bad idea.
Right. And then we rewrote history, which is even worse.
Oh yeah, we did that too. Well, I think since history started, we've rewritten history.
Right. Well, I'm saying when I say we rewrote history, no one looks at, the trust in God we trust.
Nope. Don't want to talk about that.
If you debate it with somebody and you say it wasn't added to anything until 52, they will go up and down and, no, that's always been. No. Our founding fathers were Taoists, not Christians.
Yeah. And that's a Cold War issue.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just like,
yeah.
The fact that we did not have a national religion until we got into the Cold War, and we wanted to dissociate from Russia's from communism and atheism.
Right. And Lenin.
We wanted to dissociate, like, you can't be a communist with religion.
Right.
Like it, and that created a whole weird place. So we threw In God We Trust on everything and went, that'll fix it.
Yep.
And we're a Christian nation. All right, that's great.
Right.
No. And again, most of this was propaganda based. It was about building nationalism.
Right.
And I think it's why, we've got to be in the earliest generations that have a big problem with nationalism.
Right.
Because the way we create nationalism and then what that goes on, like it's a snowball. You start with a little tiny snowball called nationalism. We want to create nationalism.
Right.
Because we need the unity. We need to justify this war and bring everyone together that this is a good thing.
Right.
And you push it down a hill and it sweeps up everything.
Right.
Like a giant out of control snowball.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens, and the people that get bowled over with it and ripped into it, and the disaster it creates from this one little idea that was like, okay, we've got to win this war,
right?
To like, you've totally changed a culture.
Exactly.
Like, did you win the war? You know what I mean? Like, that becomes like a moment, like, did you win? Because you had to give up a lot of things along the way.
Right.
Like, you hurt a lot of people. There were co-casualties of this war.
Right.
that in effect is still going on from something you said was over.
Mm-hmm.
It's still influencing.
Right. And continues to this day to influence culture, belief systems, behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
and weird things, boiled down backwards. And then, there's a psychic that said one of these days the U.S. will become Russia and Russia will become the U.S. They will switch places. And you have to be like watchful because there's a high chance that could be occurring. Brenda says people need to really read about the founding fathers. Laugh out loud. They were not who people think they are. No, they were not. They were much more
people.
Deeper. Well, not only that, but they were more deeper.
Well, right, but I think that's the lost part of history sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Is we want to really put a lot of focus on that one major event,
right,
and their contribution to it. We will sanitize and whitewash them,
mm-hmm.
and just like pure as the driven snow,
right?
And it's like not true,
right?
Not true. These were people. They made life choices and mistakes. They grew and learned. And sometimes their motivation wasn't pure.
Right. And sometimes.
And that's okay.
Well, and that's why there's like a lot of misnumbered information in history because it was whitewashed. It was cleaned up in the 50s. It was changed in the 50s. Even to today's beliefs in some things are incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's history's always been, will always be a prickly place,
right?
Regardless of what you look at, and like it's hard to take any issue in history,
right,
and make it something that you can explain,
right,
to roughly a 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
In like 45 minutes.
Right.
Because that's mostly what we're doing with history is can boil it, condense it, cram it in to a series of facts and information that is child appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully inspirational.
Right. Or
at least is a good moral lesson.
To make them look deeper.
Mm-hmm. Like history's a fucked up place.
It is, but you're not going to find it in like publicized information. You're going to have to go find it in like reading the letters of Benjamin Franklin to his estranged wife, reading the information of like Andrew. Oh, what is his name? Third president of the United States. Adams.
Jackson? Adams.
Yeah.
Andrew?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I
thought it was John Adams.
It was probably John. I think it's John Adams. Anyhow.
Okay. Like I'm sitting here going, like we've talked about, and I think joked a little bit about like there's that TikTok phenomenon of like the cleaving of different timelines together.
Right.
And it was like, am I having one of those moments where you remember a president that I don't remember?
Well, we've not had the best. We've not had the best presidents. But like, people want to scream voters' rights. And, we need to, have better voters' rights. We've got the best voters' rights as we've had, considering that originally the only people that were to vote or allowed to vote was landowners. White landowners.
Mm-hmm. For many years. White male landowners. For
right.
Many years. But we also have to consider within there, there are no good rulers.
Right.
I'll go on record and say that. There are no good rulers. If you want to take this historical perspective that we feel compelled to create,
Right.
of like this perfect saintly ruler.
Right.
In reality, none of them are. They're
Right.
not saints. They're not, God ordained. Contrary to many generations of monarchies, you're not God ordained. You are not, imbued with Christ-like characteristics. You're a human being. You
Right.
make mistakes. You do horrible things. And that's, I mean, to a certain extent, like there should be inspiration from the fact of that's okay. You can grow, you can learn, you can change, you
Right.
can adopt new ideas. You all of these things can occur, and still you can do good things, even if
Right.
you are imperfect as a human being.
Right. But, a lot of this rewriting of history, a lot of this bullshit of history, I get so annoyed with. And people are like, why are you mad about, XYZ? And I'm like, and we got into this earlier. It's not a planned topic, but we'll go for it. Okay. You commented on a survey that people done about renaming of a school.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So Virginia changed Confederate-based school names.
Mm-hmm.
And in one area, there is currently a petition, or a survey that was sent out by a group that is petitioning to change the names back for like Stonewall Jackson, and I never can remember the other school, but Stonewall Jackson High School, for example, back to Stonewall Jackson.
Right.
And so they sent the survey out to like 8,000 people. And they are blown away with this 93% of people want the name changed.
Right.
14% of people responded.
Right.
Meanwhile, there seems to be this conflation between we sent out a survey. We're a group. We're not a political entity or a governmental entity. We're not a school board entity. Right. We are just a group of people with an idea that formed a nonprofit who mailed a survey. And there seems to be this overwhelming idea that, like, this was an election.
Right.
By God, if you wanted your voice heard, you should have voted. And it's like, it's mail.
Right.
People got something in the mail, and you're upset they either didn't open it, opened it and went, what the fuck? Or like, no. But do I really want to like give this entity all my information?
Right.
To respond to their survey.
Right. And, and we were talking, and I'm like, it makes no sense. Okay, here are my following characteristics and my following opinion of those. Were these people influential in the area? No. Did these people want anything named after them? No. Was this done before, 1876? No. Change it.
Yeah. Because there's a fine, like, and here's the thing. If you are from an area, because this is all, like, their big talking point is that you're trashing our heritage, and are you though?
Right.
Like, explain that to me. What is the heritage? What is your history? Right. What is your connection?
Right.
Because what you're going to find is this great historical person that you think is so much a part of your history and your heritage, had nothing to do with this area.
Right.
They didn't even pee here. Okay. Right. But somewhere along the way, daughters of the American Revolution, because that's who predominantly paid for this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Because they could not let it go.
Right.
Massively paid for.
Right.
Monuments and renaming and naming of buildings and across the board.
Right.
To hook into this dog whistle.
Right.
Of racism.
Right.
And you want to celebrate that.
Right.
Like, think long and hard on that. Is that really a heritage? And I'm using that word loosely.
Right.
A heritage.
Right.
Worth talking about.
Right.
Worth making a fight over.
Right.
Because that's not how that works.
Right.
I mean, and I likened it to we're in Oak Hill, West Virginia. If you've never watched the show, didn't know that. We're in Oak Hill, West Virginia. And like Hank Williams died here.
Right.
Maybe. We're not sure. There's debate.
Dead here.
He was pronounced dead here. And there is a tourism campaign around it, basically.
Right.
Like we're trying, like Oak Hill will make so much money off of this, it's ridiculous. Because it's something.
Right.
Like they've latched onto it for tourism dollars. Got to have something. Hank Williams may have died here.
Right.
We'll take it.
Well, he's pronounced death here, so they'll claim me he died here. What I don't get is why they are not banking off of little Jimmy Dickens, who used to be a DJ and a live singer for radio here in Oak Hill, West Virginia. He broadcasted on WAY. That was his home station.
Mm-hmm.
Why they don't ever talk about him, I don't know. But, you know, I quickly had to refresh myself.
Okay.
On Stonewall Jackson. The only area, and I do mean only area, that should be using Stonewall Jackson in any damn form, and that's actually Thomas Jonathan Jackson, should be Clarksburg.
What?
Clarksburg, West Virginia. The rest of these places,
No. This was a bid to keep racism
alive.
Right. To not let go of
right.
And it's problematic. More to the point, and here's what always bugs me with this. And it's like the issue that seems so hard to actually like get past all of the weeds to really get to.
Right.
Is this even an issue that needs decided by might is right, i.e. let's vote? Or is this one of those situations where you're calling, like you've already voted, you voted people in to make decisions to represent your community.
Right.
And you need them to be of good moral fiber and recognize that this is not a situation where the majority gets a say.
Right.
This is a situation in which the wrongs are so bad.
Right.
That it doesn't matter what its historical significance might be.
Right.
Or its heritage is. We're dealing with the here and now.
Right.
We're dealing with children in schools now that have to walk into a building that prominently displays a name that is so tightly tied to one historic event. You can't separate it.
Right.
And that event is racism and slavery.
Right. And the other side of that, and this is the larger problem I have with it.
Mm-hmm.
Stonewall Jackson, Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, every one of them were horrified. Well, except Stonewall Jackson, he was shot in battle. Were horrified of people naming anything after them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, no, I don't want that. Please don't do that. Please don't do this.
Don't make the rest of my life about this event.
Right.
Don't make my future legacy about this event.
You know, and my prime example is Jefferson Davis. The only reason Georgia has one is Jefferson Davis.
Mm-hmm. Great, celebrate that. That's
right.
I mean, unfortunately, part of his history story,
right,
is gonna be tied to this event,
right?
But that's not what we're here for today.
Mm-hmm.
Not what we're here for today.
Right.
It's about the wine.
Right.
Focus on the wine. We can footnote the fact that he was involved in this.
Right.
But that's not what this is about. We did not just randomly put his name on a winery.
Right. You know, and he was a cotton planter, and he ran cotton, and you know, these are things that are useful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like George Washington. Everyone talks about George Washington. Very few people talk about how his teeth affected how our A, view of him was, mm-hmm. and B, his teeth actually affect how dentures are made today.
Mm-hmm.
No conversation about that.
No.
Yeah. They talk about a cherry tree that he wasn't even there for. They don't talk about his accomplished career as a surveyor. They don't talk about his poetry that he wrote. They barely mention his poor wife, which she has a harrowing story to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, her fights during the Revolution.
Yeah. Well, and how much of that is because the point in our own timeline
mm-hmm.
where we learn about George Washington,
right,
is we're what, 6?
I don't know. I had advanced history. Like if you have, like, I can't remember when. It's just that George Washington was always the first general of the United States, not president. His original title was general.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't president until like late 1786.
Okay, but I'm talking about like if you are a C student,
right,
all the way through school. I think it's roughly 6 years old. You start learning your presidents,
right,
and like you're not just learning about one,
right.
But you know, there's you know,
right.
Washington,
mm-hmm.
well, President's Day,
right.
Yeah. Anyway, so you have a little extended lesson on him,
right,
and you're like 6,
right.
And so again, we are consolidating history and just like wring all the ick out of it, because you got to teach it to a 6-year-old.
Right.
You got to teach George Washington
mm-hmm.
to a 6-year-old.
And what gets me is they don't mention Mary Washington. Now, Mary Washington, Martha Washington.
There you go.
Do you not realize that a lot of the beginnings of women's rights came from Martha Washington? The other things they don't mention in the Revolutionary is the number of women that fought in a Revolutionary War, but not officially, or those that cross-dressed to fight the British in the Revolutionary War. They don't even discuss the Loyalists or the Royalists in the Revolutionary War, you know, discussion of the Revolutionary War. You ask them about General Benedict Arnold, they think you're talking about a breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
This is technically a dinner. That's why it's called a Benedict Arnold or Eggs Benedict.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, but and this is sometimes again part of the problem.
Right.
Is that most people,
Right.
like, and I'm not throwing off on C students. I'm just saying,
Right.
like, typically, unless you are an academically gifted student, go on to study, history in college, etc.
Right.
And that's got to be American history specifically.
Specifically.
There's a lot you're never going to know.
Right.
That you're going to be working with this like 6-year-old model,
right,
of who is George Washington.
Right.
And it's why, like, the History Channel can sit here and do hours of programming,
Right.
about all the things you learned in school wrong.
Right.
Because it's not really that you per se got it wrong. You got what you were supposed to get.
Right.
Which is a lot less than the reality.
Right.
And so it's far more complicated than, but again, try to explain that, like, how long would it take for a 6-year-old brain
Right.
to take in all
Exactly.
of George Washington and Martha Washington and early American history?
Right.
If you were to present it, like, the amount of things you would have to prerequisite teach
Right.
to even get there, that's a whole school year.
Right.
Just alone, that's one whole year. And I mean, you could do nothing else to get a 6-year-old to the point they might be able to grasp it.
Right. It's kind of like you can't not get Benjamin Franklin went to France during the Revolution. I got annoyed with this because they showed him leading a boat. And it was incorrect in school. So I got in trouble for correcting the teacher's shit. He was in France.
Got in trouble for contradicting a textbook.
Right. He was in France the whole Revolutionary War. Why? Because that's the only way he can get the French. And it was late night parties, drinking, and what's the word I want to use here? Playboying his way through France. And this countess, this queen, this duchess, to get them to come and help the United States with the Revolutionary War. Only way it was going to happen. But no one talks about his Jezebel time.
And a lot of that is because, again, how do you explain that to a child? How do you sit there and, one, for people that, like, because again, you're talking about children who don't really have a firm grasp on what some of this is, and then we have like a kind of moral standard to uphold, that does not want to celebrate, which you would to some degree, if you explained it properly, whoring, drinking, and flirting, again, you have to wipe all that out and be like, he was very instrumental in the like, we're just gonna gloss over that, and we will never speak of it, and because, again, you have compression, but that's also one of the scarier problems of education, that I don't think, because of all the issues we have with education, that we've begun to even consider, is 100 years ago, American history was a lot smaller. We didn't have a whole lot going on yet. So expecting in a time period to teach children about this made a lot of sense. In the last 100 years, how much of that first 100 did we have to collapse? And just be like, take that out, speed through that, drop that, because we've got to add more shit in.
Right.
Because we teach it linearly.
Right.
Predominantly, we teach it as in a linear fashion.
Right.
From, starting around kindergarten all the way to graduation. And by the time you graduate,
Mm-hmm.
you're supposed to be dealing with current topics, or
Right.
as current as your 10-year-old textbook can be, in, like current government and politics.
Right.
Like, how much more can we compress as we keep going forward?
Right. And the other part of that is what I do not get is why they do not, like, they'll bring in poorly written historical information for terrible historical information. When we get letters every day from John Adams to his wife, we've got him complaining about Franklin and his party, and him courting this one or courting that one. And then, notices of money being sent from France to the US. And then finally, the hired henchman of France that was actually German soldiers and Austrian soldiers that were hired by France coming here to fight the battle.
That goes off onto such a tangent.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe that has to do with Texas. If you want to know why all of our historical information is fucked,
right,
you have to go to Texas.
Right.
Which, if you don't know what that means, look it up.
Right.
Because that's a whole conversation.
Yeah.
But the very abbreviated version is, and I forget what it's specifically called, but basically it's a committee in Texas that predominantly controls what our textbooks contain.
Right.
And they have unilateral authority to reject, change, offer change suggestions before they adopt a textbook. So your publishers fit the narrative that Texas wants to teach their students. And because it's such a huge market, it flows out into, we do one textbook and it makes Texas happy.
Right. We hear about, in like 2 sentences of a paragraph, the papers.
Yeah. And again, there's so much history that we don't even get into.
Right.
And there's cool history. History is just cool, period.
Right.
That you won't find out about until college.
Yeah.
And then you take a class and your jaw hits desk because you're like, this is the coolest shit ever.
Right. Well, it's like the Civil War.
People again.
Right.
You start talking about real people, not cartoon characters.
Well, and it's like the Civil War's main subject was slavery, North versus South, and slavery. The other 3 things was taxation, cotton, and milling, and trade lines.
Again, we got to compress this down and make it understandable to children.
Right.
And that becomes the future problem.
Right.
Is that most of these kids will turn into adults, and this is all they know.
Right.
This is it. Whatever you could cram in.
Right.
That's it. They're going to die, and that's going to be it.
Right. It's like, I don't understand why they don't tell the story of, I don't remember what year it was. It was the year that Virginia left the Senate. They left the Senate because their senator literally was charged and was going to be jailed because he took his cane and beat a Massachusetts, I believe, representative with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's violence.
Yes.
So we don't want to talk about that.
Right.
Like, again, it's because we're making this for children. So we can't actually talk about real history.
Right.
We have to make it kid-friendly.
Right.
And then, unless you have an interest, unless the History Channel makes a program about it and you happen to watch it.
Or someone puts on a play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even then, you'll sit there and be like, that couldn't have happened. That's not what,
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I think, like, for a lot of this, I think it's...
Right.
And granted, sometimes adaptation is not accurate either.
Right.
But I think we're so conditioned to believe
Right.
that no adaptation is ever accurate.
Right.
At all, whatsoever. None of this historically happened. It's just a flight of fancy.
Right.
That we don't even absorb from that.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, oh, these were complex adult human beings.
Yeah.
Who were like 30 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I think that's a real revelation for people.
Right.
That, like, hi, process this.
Right.
Like, you're a 30-some-year-old on the internet going, I had to adult today. It really sucked.
Right.
Okay, this historical figure, like, I don't know, killed 20 people that day.
Right.
Like, if you go back a couple hundred years.
Right.
Like, boom, brain explosion.
Right. Or Martha Washington sold her clothes to feed, her husband's soldiers during the winter.
Yeah, like, to actually make association between the age you are
Mm-hmm.
and, like, a historical event and a person alive in history.
Right.
Like, try to stop and imagine sometime that beyond what you learned,
Right.
this was a whole human.
Yeah.
Who was the same age as you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what they had to deal with?
Right.
Like, you can't handle calling, like, your pharmacy, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Without complaining about it.
Well,
They
and
had to go do this.
exactly. Or, this is a fun one for you. The only reason women have a right to vote is about 10 women and a mother that were wives and mothers of senators and congressmen stopped doing their jobs and stopped paying its bills.
Mm-hmm.
Stopped doing their wifely duty.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, community guidelines. And refused to.
Yep. Yeah. Like, women's suffrage is fun.
Yeah, but you see women's suffrage, you see marches in the streets, you think it's this big thing, and it's like, no, it was about 10 to 20 women that went like, nope, I have a headache.
Well, I mean, it's a little more than that. It's a lot more than that. But,
Yeah.
If you really, like, again, want to boil it down some and go with the not appropriate for children history.
Right.
But appropriate for YouTube guidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird how that happens, that not performing wifely duties
Mm-hmm.
has changed a few events
In history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, the tide of history got changed because of a headache.
Right.
A very massive, long headache.
Right. So anyhow.
They went on strike. Yes, they did.
Yes, they did. All forms of strike. So one of the authors that I love, actually sat down and done a Q&A in Boston, Esther Perel, on love, sex, and polyamory.
Yes. So before her stop at the Box Center Wang Theater on Wednesday, the popular psychotherapist and podcaster chatted about touring, post-pandemic intimacy, and polyamory bylaws in Somerville. So do we just want to focus on that one part or the whole thing?
Well, let's talk about like her book, the state of affairs.
All right, so she's the author of State of Affairs, which examines infidelity and mating in captivity, a tome about sexual desire and commitment, and how people can remain together happily or not.
Mm-hmm.
Her popular podcast, Where Should We Begin, features real people talking about their private lives. Perel has helped them work through grief, trauma, sex, long-term commitment, and occasionally why they can't stop fighting. As of 2021, there's also a Where Should We Begin card game.
Yeah.
Now Perel is taking the discussion on the road with a tour she's calling The Future of Relationships, Love, and Desire. She'll be at the Box Center's Wang Theater in downtown Boston on Wednesday. The venue bills it as an immersive event, but no one will be forced to share. Listening is just fine. To preview her visit, Perel hopped on Zoom to talk about love, sex, and polyamory in Somerville. She knows plenty about it. Question. I know you've given talks in many different places. Are Boston audiences different than others? I've been all over the world from Turkey to Morocco, and I think what is interesting doing a tour in the U.S. is how much I bring out multiple voices in that city. How many of you are from Boston is a question I may ask, and how many of you were not born in the States? When you have 30 countries present in the audience, Boston becomes a different Boston, even for Bostonians. All right. So in Greater Boston, there's a lot of talk about polyamory, mostly because Somerville became the first municipality in the country to pass an ordinance where you can have more than one domestic partner. Now other communities, Cambridge, Arlington, are following suit. Is polyamory something that's coming up more for you? Are people checking in to see how you feel about it? I wrote about consensual non-monogamy and polyamory in the State of Affairs and in Mating in Captivity. State of Affairs, that was years ago. That exploration was already on the map. I wrote about it from the point of view of how it helps us reconcile the implorable duality between independence and belonging. It was one of the ways people were answering the question, how do I straddle the need for security and the need for freedom? But in addition, I think that polyamory more and more has become an answer to questions of community building. I've said before, the nuclear model is too insulated and isolated. We demand too much from one person to give us what the whole village is to provide. I've said before that gay couples have long understood the difference between emotional monogamy and sexual promiscuity, and they understood that monogamy is a primary commitment to a primary relationship that may or may not involve sexual exclusiveness. Polyamory is a philosophy, it's a practice, it's a relational arrangement. It's not just a solution to the mishaps of infidelity. It needs to be done in a context that demands enormous equality. It can't be a power maneuver. So I think we need to stop there for a second.
I think we do, and I think that's because we need to kind of talk about her answer.
Oh yeah, Brenda, I'm there with Mating in Captivity. Love that title.
Yeah, Mating in Captivity is a very interesting book. It's better to hear her read the book just because she adds to the book as it goes along. Like, she tells you the parts the editor cut
out. Don't you love when authors get enough success to be able to go through and be like, my editor sucks, here's what they cut out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes, I love her books. Read them. They're on the Aeson's advanced recommended list of reading material for relationships, because it covers like security and real working models and, you know, how do you recover for infidelity? What is infidelity? How do you handle it with grace? When is it like, no, this is dead? Or, okay, so you cheated. So what are you going to do for me?
Like, what's that about?
Yeah. What are you not getting here?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard concept for people to understand, is what are you not getting here that you're getting there?
Without taking it personally.
Right.
Like, that seems to always be the linchpin problem.
Right.
Is that in relationships, we tend to build our identity around this, I am the sole source of these things.
Right.
In my one-person relationship.
Right.
And so when we start with that model, it feels like a complete slap in the face to find out you're not successfully doing that.
Right.
In some regard,
right,
you are not successfully doing that. Because I don't think anyone ever gets the crash course into infidelity.
Right.
That it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's not about you.
Yeah.
It's really not about you. It becomes about you because you make it about you, because you've been taught it's about you, because you've tied your value and worth
right
into this relationship. And if anything goes wrong, sure, they're a horrible person for going and doing that, but it's your fault.
Right.
Is fundamentally the message of monogamy that we've learned.
Right.
That even if we don't actively think it, we know that exists. We know that's what the neighbors are whispering about is, well, he must have had to cheat on her because she's no good in bed or wouldn't put out.
Right.
Excuse me?
Right.
That's a really broken blame assessment. That, like, I'm not saying it's untrue. There's situations where it's true.
Right.
Like, let's deal with that. There's situations where that's true. In other situations, probably most, it never had anything to do with the other person. This was totally, as in, the person who is cheated on, that's not your fault. It has nothing to do with you. This is about a need that they had that may not have had any real connection to sex other than sex is how they fulfilled it.
Right.
In much the same way that we would talk about like sex work.
Right.
That, this isn't about, like, you don't become a sex worker
right
because you want more sex.
Right.
You become a sex worker to make money.
Right.
Like, the way that you get it is through sex.
Right.
But what you're after is financial security.
Right. And I like her answer to the next question.
Okay. All right. So I'm still trying to figure out how COVID affected people in their relationships. She responds, I think a lot of things happened in the pandemic. We experienced the complete collapse of the roles. If I sat in this chair, I was the mother, supervisor, the therapist, the wife, the friend, the sister. All in this one chair without moving, without changing clothes, without going anywhere. And you were trying to stay safe. And you saw people as potential contaminants. You couldn't be spontaneous. That's another major aspect of life, spontaneity, serendipity, happenstance. And we have not recovered that. None of this can take place in a little box on the screen like we are looking at each other now, where we think we're looking at each other and we're not. Nothing on a physiological level gives us the mirror neurons that eye contact normally should generate. The pandemic created a social atrophy in which we lost skills. We have gone inward.
I'm seeing that in dating.
Okay. How's that coming up?
Well, it's coming up.
Just get a different perspective.
Right. I get a different perspective. I get this perspective afterwards, and it's like a lot of people are still expecting the old rules of like 3 dates. We decide if we're going to go dating, 3 months if we're exclusive. Like all that's gone out, and it's like, no, I haven't met them in person yet. We've been talking for a year. I'm looking at moving in with them next month, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. We've missed some roadmap here, honey. Back it the fuck up.
Well, but here's the thing, though, is that because see, here's the thing that gets me though. For a lot of people, I think the panini, when we're not quoting articles, had the effect of kind of pushing them into online relationships, whether they were already part of that or not. I think if we're having the moment where someone says, oh, we've talked online for a year and we're moving in together next month, and the reaction is, whoa, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Do we start to call into question the legitimacy of like dating online?
Well, I don't call into question of dating online. I call in the question of meeting some milestones, having more than a plan of like, we're going to meet. We're, I'm meeting.
We're going to meet in a U-Haul. Yeah, I'm going to rent a U-Haul, pack all my stuff in it, drive. And as I arrive, say hi, and we're going to unload boxes because I'm moving in.
Right.
I can feel the like recoil because even I have it.
Right.
But I sit here and question, is it because we're a long ways down the road. Like if you'd said this to me a decade ago, if you'd said this to me 20 years ago, I was right there. I was right there. 100% right there.
Right.
Would have been like, oh my God, you're crazy.
Right.
Like you can't do that.
Right.
Do you think we've moved beyond that, or will we ever?
Right. I think we will. I think we'll move beyond that, but also think that we are starting to see the value of things there. Okay, so I've got other opinions about this article. We're going to hold it, and we'll come back later, like another show. Let's go for everybody's favorite section of the show. Are you an asshole?
All right. Am I the asshole for flipping out on my fiance after her daughter almost got me arrested? I, 38 male, got engaged to my fiance, 37 female, about 3 months ago. We've been dating for almost 3 years. She has 2 kids from a previous relationship, 15 female and 12 male. Their dad is involved in their lives, and for the most part, the adults all co-parent and communicate well. I get along really well with the 12-year-old, but I have always struggled to build a relationship with my soon-to-be stepdaughter, Riley. She has made it very clear to me, my fiance, and her bio dad, that she doesn't view me as a parent and doesn't want me to try and be a father to her because she already has one. A few days ago, my fiance sent me a text asking me if I could pick up Riley from school because she had something come up at work that was going to keep her late. My fiance usually picks up Riley once a week and brings her to a chiropractic appointment to help with a sports injury Riley got. She told me she would call the school and let them know that I would be picking Riley up because I wasn't on the approved pickup list yet. However, when I got to Riley's school, it quickly became apparent that my fiance forgot to call the school. The school has locked doors that require you to have a code or be buzzed in by the office. I buzzed into the office to let them know I was there to pick up Riley and that my fiance should have called to let them know. They didn't know anything about it. I was left waiting outside for 5 to 10 minutes while they figured it out. I tried calling and texting my fiance, but she didn't answer. Then the school resource officer, an actual uniformed cop, came out and told me that I would have to leave and that if I refused, then he would arrest me for trespassing. I tried talking with him, but he just kept saying I was not authorized to be on school property and that I had to leave. I had no choice but to leave without Riley. Finally, an hour later, my fiance called me back. I explained what happened and she apologized for forgetting to call the school because she got distracted with work. She told me she would figure it out and meet me at home. When she and Riley got home, Riley went straight to her room. My fiance sat me down and told me that Riley had lied to the office and told them that she didn't know who I was and had never seen me before. She thought it would be funny. She told me she explained to Riley how dangerous that was and was going to work with Riley's dad to figure out a punishment. Needless to say, I did not take the news well. I admit I did raise my voice to her. I didn't yell, but I did get louder than I usually talk. She told me to calm down, and I told her that I won't calm down because her daughter almost got me arrested because she thought it would be funny. I told her that she's just as responsible for this as Riley is because she didn't call the school, and it put me in a position where I look like a creep or predator. My fiance thinks I'm overreacting and that I need to let her and Riley's dad handle this.
Nope, not the asshole. You almost got put in jail, dude.
Not the asshole, but I think there's some missing issues here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be an overreaction for the current event.
Right.
And a little bit of an overreaction. Because I think the silent part out loud is, what if she doesn't go down the bunny trail with this?
Right.
What happens when you ask me to take her to the mall and she thinks she wants to scream rape because it'll be funny?
Right.
Or help me, I'm being abducted. What if she uses this to extort him?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of really dangerous situations that he could end up in.
Right.
Because this isn't serious to her. She doesn't care about the consequences for him.
Right.
And fundamentally, he could end up in some very ugly and dangerous situations.
Right.
Being accused of things that can get you into some very ugly and dangerous situations.
Right.
While trying to proclaim your innocence.
Right.
Like, I go with not the asshole.
Yes.
I don't know that I could move forward in that relationship at this point. Like, I'd be pumping the brakes on that wedding. And I would probably be considering moving out.
Right.
Because, I'm sorry, that's a series of risk factors.
Exactly.
That it's like, you got to rein that in, or we got to wait for her to age out.
Right.
Like, one of the two. Like, we cannot do this.
Right. All right. So the poll is up. Feel free to vote. You've got yes, OP is an asshole. No, OP is not an asshole. Everyone is shitty here, or damn, you're in a deal pickle, which means that nobody is an asshole, but y'all got problems you got to work out. All right. So it's time for some poly advice.
Yes. I got vetoed for something that wasn't my fault, and it sucks a lot. It finally happened. I got vetoed for something that wasn't my fault. I think I just want to vent. Having it all written down makes me feel a little clearer. It might also be nice to get unbiased confirmation that this sucks. I legitimately don't know what I could have done better other than not losing my temper in the end. I, 29, they, them, was seeing 2 out of 3 people in a polycule, one of which is demi-romantic, mid-late 20s male, we'll call R, and never developed feelings for me, which is fine, and the other, early 30s non-binary, we'll call B, who we felt pretty hard together. Their wife-girlfriend was nice enough, and we had a great meta relationship where she would tell me if anything was up with one of the others. I love them all so much, and they were all kind and open with me. They're the ones who got me cake for my birthday. I helped them through terrible shit in their lives, and they helped me. My girlfriend, not Miss Kuehl, came to me a couple of months ago saying she found out she has HPV. Nothing wrong, just wanted to share, so I knew. I immediately disclosed this information with the Kuehl and told them I would work on getting tested, but it was going to be hard. I have a history of sexual assault, and getting a PAP triggers a strong trauma response. Both my partners opted to not have sex, even though we used barriers, until I got it figured out. Sure, that's fair. It sucked, but I could accept it. I went to an OBGYN for just a consult so we could talk about getting the exam without it being too traumatic. The doctor I talked to was so kind and so helpful. She told me I don't actually need to worry about it for the reasons I was. She essentially said we don't really test for HPV for tracing or spreading. We test to see if there's anything abnormal. That I wasn't necessarily at any more or less risk. I was vaccinated when I was a teenager, and I've done the whole STI testing regularly with nothing coming up. That everyone gets HPV and it comes and goes. That I would more than likely already know if there was any problem. She did pair me with a doctor who can help me through the process and is well versed in trauma informed care so that when I'm ready, I can get a PAP. I scheduled an appointment with the new doctor and left feeling a little less miserable about the whole thing. I immediately told my partners about the whole experience and said I was on the way to getting tested, but that I can do it at my own pace according to the doctor. I let my partners make their decisions from there. I had B over this weekend and we had a fantastic time, including sex with condoms. Sunday night, they let me know that they're not feeling well and going to bed early. Monday morning, I text my partners good morning as usual. I didn't get anything all morning and I was getting worried, so I hit up Meta and asked if everything was okay with everyone. I didn't hear back. Around like 2:30, I get a call from B and they sound distraught. They told me they fucked everything up and they broke Meta's trust and now we can't see each other for a while. I was kind of shell-shocked and confused. Apparently, Meta is at a higher risk of cervical cancer, and B didn't communicate properly that we had resumed having sex. I asked if this was a we can't see each other for a bit, but we will work on it, or if we're breaking up, and they told me it's probably best if we broke up. They kept apologizing over and over. At the time, I wasn't mad. I don't think I was feeling anything other than shock. After we hung up and I was processing it, I started getting pissed. Pissed that I'm tossed aside just because Meta is upset because of a miscommunication on their part. Pissed that they thought I would want to wait around until Meta deemed it appropriate for them to talk to me again. I texted R to see if he's going to stop talking to me because of the same thing between Meta and B and I. He then tells me because he performed oral on me once, like 6 months ago, Meta didn't want him to talk to me anymore, and he has to respect that. That I'm a good person, kind, compassionate, but for some reason he wasn't planning on telling me until I asked. I've never ever told anyone fuck you in earnest. I'm almost never a dick to people, even if they deserve it, and even if I feel terrible about it. I'm always the bigger person, always the first to apologize, even if it's not my fault. I said fuck you to them all. I said it and I meant it. I still love B so much, and unfortunately very few things could ever change that, but I'm so pissed. Even worse, Meta is a therapist. I'm so disappointed. She should know better than to treat people like they're disposable. She should know that her problem is hers and my relationship is mine. I'm so pissed. She wanted to be friends at one point, and I was all for it. She pulled back and I let her go at her own pace. I guess she just didn't like me after all. I told her so. I knew it wouldn't do me any good, but I was on a roll. She told me not to contact her again, and she wouldn't compromise her safety and health for someone who refused to get tested. So I texted B and told them off for letting Meta think this was my fault. Um, I blocked them all. Sorry, it's just the language I'm starting to skip over.
Right.
Getting repetitive. I'm just so angry and hurt. R, I've completely written off because he's been seeming like he'd checked out a long time ago. He's always held me at arm's length, but B was so sad, so apologetic, so miserable. I can't help but feel like they're a victim in this whole thing too. I'm angry that they didn't come to me to talk this through like a partner, like a person they loved, hell, like a friend they respected, rather than toss me out. But I think they got scared and shut down, and I can forgive that if they ever wanted to talk about it. There's no way I could ever be with them again as long as Meta is involved, but they're so madly in love with her that they never walk away. So they get to be controlled and make decisions based on her whim, and that's just life. I know it's not going to do me any good, but I didn't block B on Steam or Discord. They probably know my Reddit. That's mostly why the throwaway. It makes me mad that I'm still waiting just a little bit for them to text me how sorry they are for throwing me out and how it's wrong how they treated me. I know I need to find the closure in myself. I know I should just block them completely on everything, but part of me has a sliver of hope, which is stupid, but I am here. And I know it's been like 3 days and you just cannot process grief like this overnight. I just want to logic through this and force my way to the end. I've been gathering I Deserve Better, You're Missing Out music. So if anyone has suggestions, I'm totally down for it. I feel mixed emotions. Part of me wants them to hurt, to remember me and know what they did to me and that it was their choice to do this. I wish I could hear them tell me that they know it's wrong, but part of me feels like a dick. I've never talked to anyone like that before. What if I was the bigger person again this time? If I waited to see what happened when they had time to settle down and talk about it, could I have patched it up with them? Should I have? I am so tired. I feel a physical, painful ache, like if I wear a binder too long and it's crushing my ribs. My head hurts, and I keep getting waves of pain over and over and over, and it just doesn't stop. I miss them. I miss texting B stupid things. Little I was thinking of you text or pictures of my cat. Song lyrics stuck in my head, games I was playing. I miss playing video games together. I miss them making me a drink whenever they came over because they made the best old-fashioned. I miss how tight they hugged me, how much they showered me with love. They had invited me over for a 420 celebration next week. I'm going to see another one of my loves. They and their husband are coming to see me. I'm going to try to start making friends closer to me. Everyone lives like 40 minutes to 2 hours away. I know I can make it through this. I know I still have amazing people that love me and would never do this to me. I know I deserve better than this. It just sucks a lot right now.
Yes, this veto power is so unethical. And
I don't even think this
fucking road.
Like, to me, this isn't even veto power.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think you express veto power very early.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that is in the very, like, hi, I'm thinking about dating this person. Mm-hmm. Hi, I've been on a couple of dates with this person. What do you think?
Right.
If you're going to have veto power, I think that's when you use it. I think going down the road this far,
mm-hmm.
and it's not even veto power exactly.
Right.
It's literally what you called it, is you are at the whim of this Meta.
Right.
Whatever she says goes, or whatever they say goes.
Right.
Whatever. Just whatever. At any point. And the bigger problem I have with it is, like, even in veto power, like, you should be communicating and expressing and making it clear
mm-hmm.
that, like, this is what's going on, this is where we are, this is what's happening. They were ready to, like, ghost OP.
Yeah.
Just gone.
which
Done.
is even worse dynamics.
Like the fact that as a partner, you have to go begging around
Mm-hmm.
and go through someone else to find out what's even going on and prompt someone to tell you
Right.
what's going on.
Is a problem.
What the hell, man?
Yeah.
Like, no. That's not, if that's veto power is garbage.
Well,
Like, if that's what you think veto power is,
Yeah.
in terms of as a general philosophy, if that's
Right.
what you think veto power is,
right.
that's garbage.
Right.
That's garbage. That's horrible to other people.
Right.
And then there's the whole source of it.
Right.
Like what this all started over.
Right.
It's like, yeah, this is a concern in polyamory.
Yeah.
That you know, STIs happen.
Yeah.
People get them.
Yeah. But
you really have to get on a page about your sexual health.
right. And then you also have to get educated.
Yes.
That's the other part that sickens me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what the fuck?
And I'm going to go out on a limb here. An unpopular opinion, I'll go ahead and tell you, especially in our polyamory. There is this magical fairy tale land
Mm-hmm.
that I will point out that our polyamory lives in.
Right.
In which there's this perfect no risk situation.
Right.
And that no one should ever get an STI ever.
Right.
And if you do, you're garbage.
Right.
Like there is a really overwhelming predominance in that particular subreddit.
Right.
That has a lot of stigma around any STI.
Right.
STI. Whatsoever.
Right. It's ridiculous.
Like, horrible place to talk about fluid bonding, horrible place to talk about STIs. They will come crashing down on you regardless. Like, I'm surprised it even has any upvotes.
Right. You know, but they, first of all, don't enter a relationship when all parties aren't equal.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Secondly, veto power should only be used ever at the extreme, thanks Windows, at the extreme situations.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking if you would not let yourself go through that relationship. Okay. Physical problems.
Mm-hmm.
Behavioral problems.
Yes. Like, I think if you're getting abused, physically abused, for example,
right,
in a relationship, I think veto power is a good thing to use.
Yeah.
And be like, no, if that's the relationship you're going to stay in,
mm-hmm.
and I have to do all the abuse victim cleanup,
mm-hmm.
I'm out.
Right.
I'm done. I won't do it.
Right.
I'm done.
Right.
That makes sense to me.
Right.
If you're in a relationship with someone with addiction,
yeah,
and there's no effort to try to resolve that,
right,
and you're basically opening me up to a multitude of unsafe situations,
right,
I can see veto power,
right,
and going, nope, I'm out.
Right.
Pick one.
Yeah.
Can't do both.
Right. That's ethical use of veto power. This is an ethical use of veto power. This is an educated use of veto power. And what gets me more is she's a therapist.
Oh, yeah. I do have to approach one little thing.
Okay.
Well, it's not a little thing, it's a big thing. Like, there's a lot of self-beat up in this post.
Right.
About not being the bigger person and just, like, calling the bullshit.
Right.
Don't do that, please.
Don't. Call bullshit.
like, no, this is an appropriate call of ridiculous bullshit.
Right.
Multiple layers of it.
Right.
And this is not a moment to go meek and timid and go, well, maybe if I were nicer, it would have turned out better. No, it was garbage. You called it garbage.
Yeah.
I think that's the better response in this situation, is so that they can have the mirror.
Right.
This was garbage behavior.
Yeah.
You don't treat people like this.
Right.
You deserve being told fuck you.
Right. And what I don't like, and this is something, and I'm going to go on the other side here, because I've had people do this and I get pissed at them. I don't like when you have to go through a meta. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. No.
Like,
that's. Yeah, it's the dumps. It's one bag of the dumpster fire of this post.
Right.
But yeah, Brenda's comment, that's not veto power, that's one person ruling the group. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is why hierarchical relationships get such terrible raps.
Yeah. Which we see that mirrored in the Esther Pearl commentary on polyamory.
Right.
Which I was going to bring up, but we'll talk about that in another episode.
Well, no, we can talk. That's the reason I stopped it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Was that we could address it, like the two pieces tied in together.
Oh. Okay, so cool. So another segment.
Right.
Yeah. No, those two things tie together really, really well, because this is it may not be a named hierarchical situation, but and again, another place I'll ding our polyamory is there is a segment of that population that just holds on to hierarchical polyamory is okay.
Right.
And it isn't.
No.
Because this is, and I don't mean to totally trash it because of this, but this is what it turns into.
Right.
So often.
Right.
So often is that primary relationship controls everything.
Right.
And it treats other people as subordinate, second-class humans, or non-humans as the case may be.
Right.
Does not respect them, does not care about them,
right,
can't even be bothered to communicate with them,
and
throws them away like garbage when it's no longer convenient for them,
right,
to be part of the polycule.
Right.
That's what I hate. It's prevalent. I don't mean that all hierarchical polyamory has to be bad, but this is the version it most commonly takes.
Right.
And I hate that because this is horrible.
It is. It's horrible in multiple different areas. It's horrible in multiple different situations. And I'm sorry, it's unethical. That is an unethical situation. And I get that there's times that, one relationship needs more focus, or one partner has to handle a situation differently than another. But that does not mean you go superpower blow up.
Right. Well, and that's, again, kind of where hierarchical, what it does.
Right.
Is it makes that primary, secondary, tertiary, like whatever your hierarchy is, it puts so much emphasis that like the paper cut for the primary partner,
right,
is eternally more important than major surgery, gunshot wounds, like you name it. There is no situation that secondary partner can ever have that is going to trump that paper cut.
Right.
You got an owie, I must drop everything.
Right.
Run to the primary.
Right.
What?
No.
No. That's how do you think a relationship's going to work
Right.
if like your curfew is 11, but we just got into a major car accident. Thankfully, you're okay. I have to be transported by ambulance to a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, I can't stay. I have to be home by 11.
Yeah.
The fuck you think we're dating?
Right.
The fuck you think we're dating?
Right.
I just got involved in a car accident. Fuck your curfew.
Exactly. You know, and that's where like hard, solid rules in relationships do not work. There's got to be flex. There's got to be changing situations. There's got to be a look at the situations. There also, you know, there is a balancing at times, but there's a balancing, but there's like which fire is burning.
Mm-hmm.
And then what should happen in a proper, organized, communicative, equal poly relationship is you just got in a car accident. We'll be there in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom, boom. Everybody shows the hell up. Who's getting breakfast? Who's going to take care of dinner? Okay, they're going to be coming out with bruises and bumps, and they're not supposed to be left home for 24 hours, but I got a 16-hour shift. I'm taking Tuesday. That's the benefit of poly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, non-hierarchical polyamory tends to be a village.
Right.
And it's like, I don't have to love with you. I don't have to be in a relationship with you.
Right.
I do recognize your importance to someone I'm in a relationship with.
Right.
I'm also a decent human being.
Right.
And I can personally
Right.
dislike you all I want to. I can still recognize this is important and worthy of my attention and effort.
Right.
Because you're a human being connected to me.
Right.
And I can put aside any personal feelings I have.
Right.
To go, okay, you need care and attention.
Right.
But you can't do that from a throne.
No.
And that is unfortunately what hierarchical polyamory does.
Right.
Is from the throne of your fiefdom, you look at your serf
Mm-hmm.
and go, let them eat cake.
Right.
Tone deaf, clueless, no understanding.
Right.
Talking out your ass.
Mm-hmm. And here's an example. A situation recently happened within the star.
The constellation.
I found out about it. I communicated it. And then everyone's like, okay, so what do we got to do? And at that time, it was still like, I don't know. And they're like, well, I don't care. You've got a blank check. Go do what you got to do. We'll figure the rest out.
Go do what you got to do. Don't care. Like, what can we do? Do I need to do something? Like, let me know.
Right.
I'll do anything. Should we do this? Like, we start coming up with ideas.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a village.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't my partner. They don't have to be my partner.
Right.
I can look at another human being and go, what we doing?
Right.
This isn't cool. What we doing?
Right.
I don't know why that's so hard,
right.
But hierarchical, it seems to die.
Right.
To recognize other people are human beings.
Right.
And that, maybe your paper cut's not really fucking important.
Right.
Not that I'm trying to compare a high risk for cervical cancer to a paper cut.
No, but that tells me they're not communicative. They're not functioning, and they're not even knowledgeable.
Right. Well, and I understand fears about increased risk factors.
Right.
I think we also have to accept that, this is a risk factor, and there are mitigating steps that we can take right now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we're doing it.
Right.
And this is not the end of the world.
Right.
Like, no one's trying to hurt you. No one's trying to take down your kingdom.
Right.
Like, breathe.
But looking at it overall, from the perspective I'm at, I think they were looking for a reason.
Yes. Fundamentally, on a silver platter, they got handed a reason to veto.
Right.
From their perspective. Like, this is justifiable. You're asking me to harm myself and put myself at risk.
Right.
Yeah, we also ask you to do that when you, I don't know, drive to a doctor's appointment.
Drive a car.
When you got up this morning and went to work.
Mm-hmm.
We asked you to take a risk when you took a shower. You could fall.
Right.
There's risk in life. There is risk.
Right.
We do what we can to minimize those risks. We wear seat belts. We drive, responsibly. We make good choices.
Yes.
And that was occurring.
Mm-hmm.
We don't refuse to leave the house and ban anyone else from doing it either.
Right.
Like, generally a therapist would know, at that level,
mm-hmm.
you have a mental health disorder.
Right.
When you are so afraid of the risk,
right,
that you become a shut-in and you just shut out the world so you're safe, that's generally considered a mental health disorder that you need treatment for.
Right.
Because that's not reasonable.
Right.
That is an overwhelming, soul-crushing amount of fear for one human being to live with.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, hate to tell people, even friend groups should be like that. What do we all need to do to help? Exactly. All right. So, let's see where we are with Are You an Asshole?
Am I the asshole?
You've been voted not the asshole.
I feel this is unsurprising.
Do what?
I feel this is unsurprising, but that was a hell of a ride.
Exactly.
Like, I'm just sitting there, like, I was reeling, like, oh my God. I just couldn't imagine.
Right.
Like, if I were in the situation, my head would explode.
Right. And what gets me is, okay, I'm on checkout forms. You're on checkout forms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is he not on a checkout form? Like, excuse me?
I think it was probably an oversight.
And?
Like, should have been, but since they didn't talk about it, they didn't do it, so it didn't get done.
Right.
I think is where that's at. I always find out in the emergency, oh, by the way, you're one of the approved pickup people.
Right. Well, that's because there's a breakdown in communication with me at times. Like, that's my fault.
No. Oh, no, this predates you.
Okay.
Like, you have no idea the number of times.
Right.
I have found out inadvertently, or in the case of emergency, oh, you've been on the farm for years.
Right.
You could have told me. Like, I didn't, like, could you have asked me? Not that I was going to say no, but like.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of a different dynamic than I think a lot of people will expect. Is my family skips some of these conversations. It's like, oh no, you're his husband now. Get over it. It comes with these responsibilities.
It's fine.
What's your phone number? Oh, I've got it. Great.
Yeah. Well, what got me was one in particular that I'm like, you do realize if something had happened and there was a horrible emergency with the two of you and they had to call me, that your child has their bio mom's name And I would have probably answered that phone and went, who? Having no clue.
Right.
Because I don't hear that last name connected to their first name often enough
Mm-hmm.
to have immediately been like, oh, yes.
Right.
And I'm not expecting this call?
Right.
Could ever occur.
Right.
Do you know how much, like, that would have sucked?
I know, right?
Like, you've got the wrong number. I don't know, what's going on, but I don't know who that is.
Right.
Just to, like, 10 minutes later be like, oh!
Yeah.
But it finally rattles around and hits something. And, like, how awkward would that conversation be with a school? Hi. You know how one of y'all called me a little bit ago to come pick up a kid? I just realized who that kid was.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Like, I'll be there in a minute.
I'm on my way.
Right.
I'm a horrible emergency contact. Okay.
Right. But, and it's kind of like, and you've taken this one in stride. Like, every family, both sides of your in-laws are kind of like, yep, that's my son. That's my adopted son, And I'm quite waiting for the day when someone walks up for you to handle something like Mama Night. That's like sign a paper.
Like, I am not the official signature you need.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is one of those West Virginia sons.
Yeah.
This is not a governmentally recognized descendant.
Right.
Son.
Right. Like, I can't sign that. You have to actually call him. Because I'm sure, like, Rex or somebody will want, or whatever, will want something.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll be fun.
It'll be interesting because we get to have interesting conversations and explaining things. We really do.
We do.
Yeah. All right. So, what were you going to bring up about the Estelle?
Oh, we did it.
We did? Okay.
Yeah, she was talking about the like she made it a very abbreviated comment.
Right.
About like this has to have equality.
Right.
Polyamory has to have equality.
Right.
Which reads to me as like she also has a negative opinion of hierarchical polyamory for the same reason I do, which is you don't get equality.
Right.
And then we talked about the equality issue.
Right. And what I find is there was apparently South by Southwest conversation that I hope they taped with Trevor Norris, Brene Brown, and her talking about what it means to be in a room.
Oh, that would be a fun conversation.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. Like, what's it mean to actually be in a room or included in a room?
Because that is multiple perspectives on that.
Right. Yeah. So that'll be cool if that comes out. And I hope it does.
Yes. We'll be on the lookout. If we see it, we'll share it.
Yes. All right. So with that, we do want to start wrapping up. Guys, it's been a long show. We hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you guys for hanging in there. We enjoy long shows. We've tried to trim them down, but tonight it has a lot in it. So
it does. It's feature packed.
Yeah.
All right. So of course we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda, Shannon C, Shannon D, Lady Gwendolyn, Charles Shaw, Tracy Van, Caitlin Bell, and Devin. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become a Patreon sponsor and receive all the wonderful benefits our baristas receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
Yes. And guys, we will see you Sunday for Psychic the Plans. And we're going to be seeing the additions to my planner as we work some stuff out.
We will.
Yeah. So with that, guys, have a great evening. Hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe. Watch the water. Watch the rain. Watch the cold, the heat. And take care of yourselves. Bye, y'all.
Bye.